In the words of young Anakin Skywalker, I hate sand. It's infuriating. It's coarse, it's rough, it's infuriating, and it gets everywhere. The Apollo astronauts, when they were on the moon, they found this to be true of the lunar dust. It got everywhere. They couldn't keep it cleaned up. It had an electrostatic discharge, so it would connect to other things like static electricity does to humans. The suits were just full of it. They couldn't get them completely clean, especially when they were tripping around in the dust. But even without falling inside of the dust, they still had these issues. This sand, this dust, is really like sand on Earth, but it's extremely fine, it's very rough, and it can cause all kinds of serious health issues. It's really a nanoparticle that can get into everything. It's kind of like this dust here, but it's much, much smaller. You can't see particles in there. And this small particles can cause all kinds of serious damage. But there's good news. We've learned a lot in the last 50 years. One of the things the Apollo astronauts said is that the inside of the Apollo command module, the lunar module in particular, looked like a coal mine. Dust got inside all of the joints inside of the spacesuit so that they could barely even move anymore. And they don't even know if they could have done a fourth EVA. No more than 3 EVAs were done in any of the Apollo missions. So what else did we learn from there? Well, it was similar to the coal industry. The coal industry has been fighting problems for a long time. The coal dust is very, very fine, similar to the fine lunar and moon dust. And in fact, they've learned that they need to have respirators and have other equipment to help keep the miners safe while they're in there mining the dust. So the astronauts can learn from the kinds of protection they do there. They can basically clean off all of their exterior equipment before they even take it off. And in so doing, that will help keep them protected and keep their habitat relatively dust-free and hopefully not cause any of the long-term toxic problems that could be a resultant from the Mars dust. The second thing they can do is to actually keep the spacesuit on the outside of the spacecraft. Now, the Apollo astronauts had some issues with dust getting inside of the joints, and obviously the spacesuit being on the outside would cause lots of long-term issues. But this dust being on the outside could potentially be dealt with. They could do a design that doesn't keep dust inside of the joints as easily as the Apollo astronauts, and we have learned a fair bit since then. It has been 50 years almost since the Apollo program. It's my hope that we can figure this out, and the dust problem is one of the more serious issues to getting to Mars. While NASA is studying it, few organizations outside of there, other than maybe a few universities, are really taking a look at this to try to solve the Mars dust problem. I haven't heard anything from any of the major rocket aerospace companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin on how to deal with this. Although I'm confident that as these missions come to be developed further, that they'll figure out ways to improve the EVA time so that we can go on EVAs, because why would we go to Mars and not ever be able to walk out on the surface? It doesn't really seem like it's a huge point. Yes, they might spend the majority of the time inside, studying some of the Mars samples, but if they're not doing EVAs, then what's the point?
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Thank you much for joining me. Let me know whatever questions or comments you guys have about space exploration or anything else. Until next time, keep on tracking. Take care.